Hi, everyone. If I don't mind interrupting
Meeting
conversations
is being
to
recorded.
take some seats. We've started the online meeting, so we are live and recording. Just keep that in mind right now. We can go ahead and get started when everybody is ready. And without a formal chair, I will take on that role for a moment and call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is to talk about the bylaws and to see if we can come to some agreements on to moving those forward towards adoption. So with the pleasure of the commission, I ask that we start talking about that. And open to any input.
A motion to approve as is.
Or a motion to approve as is, as the county attorney just reminded me. And if you do want to speak, if you don't mind using some microphones so everybody who's streaming can also hear what you're talking about.
Well, I've reviewed them, and I didn't have any issues with anything. I thought it looked fine, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Does anybody else have any comments or questions, or can we take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Fantastic. The next order of business is Code of Conduct submittals. I have received Code of Conduct submittals for a majority of the members. I do have a list for those that have not submitted those quite yet, and we'll be reaching out to those folks via email to get those. If anybody is interested in signing one today, I do have hard copies. Next order is officer election, so chair, co-chair. And I'll lean on my county attorney here too. But we do have ballots, if people would like to do this via ballot, to nominate chair, co-chair. Looks like we have a comment.
Yeah, how do you turn this on? No, really, how do you turn this on? Is it down there?
It should be.
How about that? Point of order first. We didn't take attendance before we do a vote?
Sure, we can take attendance here. Do you have a list? Just for the record's sake, I'll read off the names. If you're here, if you would just speak into the microphone and say it really loud so that we can all hear. James Eklund.
Here.
Okay. Clark Hammelman.
Here.
Eva Ella. Evan, yes, sorry.
Evan Ela here.
Evan Ela, sorry. Jack Hilbert, I don't see him today. Roger Hudson.
Here.
Frank Johns.
Here.
Donald Langley.
Here.
James Morris.
Here.
Harold Smethels.
Here.
Tricia Bernhardt.
Here.
Sean Tonner. Merlin Klotz. Oh, these are alternates. Do we have any alternates in attendance today? Okay, so we've got a spot for Area 1. Are these assigned by individual? Yes. So who is Jack's? One moment. Just looking up who Jack Hilbert's alternate is, so we can see if they're here and if they'd like to come up to the table since Jack is not present.
My understanding is that we're going to be several people online. Are we connected to any individuals who might be dialed in?
They should be. Lynn, do we have, just to check with you, do we have Jack Hilbert online?
Jack Hilbert will be, he just messaged me or called me and said he was going to be just a few minutes late.
Okay.
We do have Sean Tonner and Craig Burrowton online on WebEx.
Okay. All right. Is it? Do they have the ability to unmute themselves?
They do. They are panelists and they should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay, Commissioner Tonner, if you could just verify that you are online and can hear us.
He looks to be speaking, but let me see if I can unmute him one moment.
Can you hear me?
Sean?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Commissioner?
I can.
Okay, great. And we can hear you. So
I have COVID. I apologize for not being there, but I didn't want to get everybody sick.
we appreciate you not coming here. If that's true. So with that, oh, and yeah, Commissioner Hilbert has just arrived here in the conference room. So with that, we have all of the commissioners present or online, and we may continue on.
With that, would the commission like to propose chair and vice chair positions via ballot? Or would an open discussion? We are prepared for either.
Sorry, we need to pay for more microphones. I'm okay with opening to the floor for nominations if you are. I'd like to open for chair first, and my good friend Jack Hilbert, I would like to nominate for chair once he catches his breath.
Well, before we go down that road, one has to accept that nomination, and good try. But I'm going to be, I have some health issues and medical conditions that I have to take care of, so I don't think it would be wise. So with that, I would have to step down. But if it's okay with you, sir, can we divert that to James as a chance? Is that all right? Or would you like to just withdraw?
I still believe you're great.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. But if you'd like to nominate James,
Okay. Well, then with that, I would like to nominate James Erkland.
I know I should. Thank you. I really would defer to obviously the will of the committee. I appreciate that everybody on this commission is going to bring different perspectives. I have the, I guess, unique attribute of or disadvantage of not receiving water from any particular water provider in this county. So I think I could bring that to the position if that was the will of the group, but I'm not campaigning for this, and would only do it if that was kind of the advantage that would make sense to bring to the chair position, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Jack.
Did I hear yes or no?
I'll do it if nominated. I would serve.
Okay. Nominations on the floor. So
This is Tricia Bernhardt. I'd like to hear from Evan as to whether you would be interested and whether you currently represent any water districts. I think we should be looking for someone who's neutral.
Well, I don't represent any water districts down here in Douglas County. I am on the board, however, of the Chatfield South District, which is one of the districts down here. I don't know. I came prepared to nominate Don Langley as the chair of the board, given his experience on the Parker board and so forth. But I think, given my time commitments, I would rather not be the chairman of this group.
I guess so. My reluctance is I'm not a longtime resident of the county. I've been here 4 years, so I may be a little short on the history, and I'd have to have help to understand, what's been going on for all these years before. But, I'll follow the will of the commission, that's for sure. If you think that'd be the right guy, I'll give it a go.
Let me see if I can serve now on Parker Board.
Yes, I'm on the Parker Water Board.
What? Oh, okay, yeah.
I have a question with that. And obviously, Parker is one of my big water providers in my city of Castle Pines. Do you not believe that's a conflict for you to be able to be chair? And I don't. A conflict as a water provider, you don't think that's sort of a conflict?
I don't believe it to be a conflict, but it's also if people thought there was the appearances of a conflict, or if that bothered people that I was directly wired into Parker Water, then I could certainly step aside on that.
I think we all have conflicts. That's why we're here. Everybody has an involvement, therefore a conflict. So I think because someone has a conflict, there isn't anybody in this room who doesn't have some kind of a conflict. As long as it's on the table, you know where it's coming from. We were selected for this because we were involved in water and had some level of experience. And so I don't find the fact someone has a disclosed conflict as being disqualifying. At least that's one person's opinion.
If I could, just as a legal perspective here, a legal conflict would be if you or your immediate family stood to benefit in some way financially from a decision to be made here. So while I know we're using the word conflict in a much more general sense, it would also still be possible for anyone who may have had a lesser conflict that we're discussing here. If there were some, for instance, if we were to discuss something that were to affect the Parker specifically, it would be possible for members, even officers, to step aside for that particular discussion or decision.
I would say at the last meeting that I was prepared to nominate James Eklund, specifically because of the, I guess, we don't want to say neutrality, or he's at a position where he's got a broad overview and a lot of experience. So I think that's a good nomination as well.
Just asking James then, do you currently, as an attorney, work for any water development projects that could be seen as a conflict here?
I don't represent any entities in the water providing entities in Douglas County. I have clients that are in Douglas County with either their development or their assets. So, to Harold's point, it's not a legal conflict, but there are perspectives that we all bring and I wouldn't be immune from that.
I came here to support, I'm excited about Jack Hilbert because of his experience as a commissioner.
Well, okay, tell you, I will withdraw my withdrawal if everybody's okay. But under the condition, there may be a day because of that, if anything progresses, it's an issue. I don't have a conflict of any kind. I don't even drink water. I drink diet soda. So, you know what? It's from that standpoint, it's only a facilitation position. The staff, the others, the experts, they drive the issues in there. And all that the chair is going to do is ensure that we keep it moving forward, ensure that the outline is there, and that if there is conflict, we can get it worked out within the group in the proper fashion without creating chaos. So I would step back now that I have withdrawn it, would have to be renominated, but I'd be going ahead and would take it. I do have a lot of experience, I will say that, facilitating meetings, being an expert at nothing, okay?
Well, I'll renominate you then. But it would certainly seem, if there are days you could be out, that we also get a good vice chairman so that things can continue. And so that would seem to me to solve that problem. But one person.
And the vice chair is next on the agenda. Vice Chair will be next.
Just wanted to give one more chances. So we've had one first and second, two potential nominees that were not seconded. Any further discussion? If not,
Then I will make a motion to nominate James Eklund.
I believe James Eklund you said you were prepared to nominate him. I counted that as nominating him. Do you still stand by that, or do you want to second that nomination?
Actually, I nominated Don.
Don. Okay. Don nominated him, I guess.
Yeah, I will second James Eklund.
So we've got a first and a second for James Eklund and a first and a second for Jack Hilbert. Any further discussion or nominations?
I will gracefully withdraw
Okay.
in the face of the competition.
With that, I would, if you're comfortable doing this as a voice or as a hand vote, then I will just do it as a hand vote here. All those in favor of Jack Hilbert, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 7. Let the record note 7 votes for Jack Hilbert. Oh, and Sean, did you? He's got his hand up. Okay, good. I'm glad someone could see. Sorry, I couldn't see you behind me. 8 votes for Jack Hilbert. Those for James Eklund. Please raise your hand. 3 votes for James Eklund. With that, Jack Hilbert will be the chair. I'm very tempted to hand this over to you and let you run as much of the meeting as you're comfortable running at this point, Mr. Hilbert, if you're okay with that. You can stay there. We'll hand.
No, I think we make him come up.
Well, in that case, there's an extra microphone right there.
Terrence.
Want your water?
And your
Yeah, I should let my water on. He doesn't drink water. Thank you, sir.
Do you know how to work these?
move over here so we can.
That's all. That'll turn it over to you for vice chair. So it's on.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't know if I want to say thank you or take names and get even later. But anyhow, I think the most important thing is to keep this thing moving forward and try to get us where we need to be. We do have many, many experts in the room with a bunch of diverse opinions who have different experiences and a lot of different issues. And many have their own, I'm not going to call it agenda because I don't really think that's what it is at this point. I think it's their own beliefs about water and concerns about water. I think it's important that we move forward to get some of those things on the table and yet meet the goals, I think, that the commissioners have given this committee. So with that, I'm going to take a minute here just to make sure I get the minutes here and the agenda in my mind for the next items up. I think we've had one election item for chair. Now we need to move to an election item for vice chair. So do we have any nominations for vice chair? Scared the hell out of everybody. So,
I'll nominate Don Langley to be vice chair.
Second.
we have a motion, we have a second for Don Langley. Any other motions? Any other motions? Process of acclamation, I think, Mr. Langley, that makes you vice chair. Thank you very much. Okay. There you go.
You have to sit behind Jack.
So you can see we moved officer elections down and we moved that up from C. At this point in time, I know we have an order of Water Commission bylaws on the next topic items. As far as action items, we have the Code of Conduct submittals, and then we have the 2024 Water Commission public meeting schedule, which I'm sure the staff will help us out. And then I think everyone has the agenda.
We've actually already gone through the
So,
first two.
what happens when you run late? You don't get to have to mess with that other stuff, so great. So are we on number D then, sir? Moving to number D, 2024 Water Commission Public Schedule Attachment. So we have a schedule then for the Water Commission. Have everybody had an opportunity to review that? I believe there are 3 items that are conflicts we'll deal with later. There are suggested dates of replacement dates on the items for those 3 holiday conflicts. So what I would like to be able to do is that look for a motion to accept the meeting dates with the recommended staff consideration dates. If those dates will not move, then somebody please make a
Second.
motion also to change it.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, second. We have a second to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, so the schedule is in place and it is approved. Okay, moving to the next item, which is approval of minutes for December 11th, 2023. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? I think they were minimal.
So moved.
Second.
Minutes have been motioned to approve, and there's been a second. Are there any amendments anyone wants to put forth? None at this point in time. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, let's say nay. With that, we do have the minutes are approved. And now we move on to the Technical Advisory Committee discussion. At that point, I'm going to turn this over to staff to kick this one off.
Staff provided a list of industry sectors, partially from the conversation we had at the last meeting, but really wanted to start a conversation off in terms of how would the Water Commission like to try to set up a TAC. Per the bylaws that you adopted earlier this afternoon, the TAC is really meant to be an advisory committee to you as you see fit, as you need it. But wanted to start that conversation, also start the conversation as to how you would like to try to invite potential appointees. Ultimately, this body will make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners as who will sit on the TAC. The Board of County Commissioners will make the final appointments.
Any questions or discussion from anybody on this item?
I would like to add that under regional organizations, since we have Denver Water, that we also add Colorado Springs Utilities. That would be our two major systems, one north and one south of us.
I have a recommendation to add Denver Water and El Paso County's water. Any other discussions? Anybody got anything to add or say about that? Yes, Mr. Langley.
Do we have any kind of document that outlines what the purpose and how the Technical Advisory Committee is going to conduct business, what we expect of them, what we're looking from them?
Look to the staff.
Nothing more than what you see in your bylaws at this point in time. So it could be something that this body wants to think about in terms of developing the 2050 Water Comprehensive Master Plan. Does this group want to serve as a steering committee for you all for that process? Is this a committee that you want to have only focus on that master planning process for you? Do you want this committee weighing in on other things that might come to you? This is something that you may want to define right now as a body.
I hate to do this. I just have one question. I'm sorry, from a procedural standpoint. Is this conversation being recorded, this meeting? Because it is recorded, if you step up, would you just please give your name before you speak so that we can have the record established correctly? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Harold Smethels. I had a question. Is this list, are these volunteers? Is that how the names got here? I was disappointed. I had hoped we'd see more of our actual water providers on the list.
So the list that was provided to you was industry sectors, and we, I think, put metro districts and water providers as a sector on there with the intent of, based on direction from this body, we would extend invitations to all the water providers.
I think that's very important that we have them involved at various levels within the water providers because they're living a lot of these things day to day.
Yeah, this is Frank Johns. That was one of my questions, because we had the regional organizations. So, Denver Water, they're similar to City of Aurora, but City of Aurora serves part of Douglas County, so they're water providers. Then what about South Metro Water Supply Authority?
They're done.
I know they're on there, but why are they a rural organization versus a water provider? It's kind of confusing as to why people are put where. And then my other comment would be on, water quality, South Platte Renew, Metro Water Recovery. They're downstream. I think, we're more interested in Plum Creek Water Authority. And I think, those would be more important to have on the Technical Advisory Committee, because, a lot of us here can speak to, discharge permits as CDPHE can. So it's just, maybe when we identify individual people from those groups, we can talk about it, but some of them just don't make as much sense.
Mr. Chairman, Evan Ela. So I guess my question is, are we trying to appoint another sitting committee that's the Technical Advisory Committee? Or are we just inviting individuals from these organizations to come advise us on a given meeting, but not actually be a sitting, functioning extra committee? That's my question, I guess.
And at this point with the bylaws, we provided flexibility to the Water Commission to define it either way, like you just indicated. So something to think about, do you want to have this body only sit to aid in the process of the master planning development process? Do you want to have go-to people for certain topics?
Well, I guess what I would think would be useful to us is to hear from most everyone on this list in some kind of a summary way about what they do and how they're interacting with Douglas County Water and how many taps they have in Douglas County, that kind of thing. And I would think after we hear these individuals, it would be easier then to pick 2 or 3 that stand out to say that person would be helpful to help us draft this water plan that we're supposed to do. But we kind of need to hear from them first. I think we should hear the people first, and then we can decide who might be really helpful.
Clark Hamelman. Yeah, maybe we ought to call for kind of an open meeting of anybody that thinks that they might have a role that falls into one of these categories. You could publish a date and invite them all to attend and let them kind of discuss how they think they can best serve this effort. And then, as you suggest, Evan, have 2 or 3 of them come back and lay out some suggestions for us to consider.
Because I think if we have a technical committee, it shouldn't be 11 or 25 people. It should be, 5, something workable.
And some of these people will represent several different areas.
So, do you mind if I share an observation just here in a second from just a facilitation standpoint, looking at this? When we're looking at a technical advisory committee, I think the first step we have to talk to ourselves is what do we mean by technical advisory committee? Because to be quite honest with you, I think we're all over the board right now because none of us really know. At least I'll rephrase it. I don't. So looking from the technical advisory, I would say there's a primary core situation where somebody said, okay, this is what we're putting forward, but who can advise us as to the best way to move forward to do that? And is it correct, incorrect, or other ways to do that? So it's kind of like, I think at this stage, we need to have a list of who we would want to have available as technical advisors, but I think it's going to be by invitation once we get to a point where we totally codify and clarify what we want the technical advisory committee to do in totality. I don't think we're there just yet. I think the discussion has to take place amongst this commission as to what is the nature of the technical advisory committee and what is it we're trying to achieve in that, because it is a subcommittee of this committee in that regard. So I think we got to get to that part first. That's going to enlighten and then give us direction as to who we need to have at the table, especially what, when, and where. And that would just be my advice, because I'm not sure what the technical committee is going to do as a total anyway, myself. So, Roger?
Mr. Chairman, Roger Hudson. I agree with you 100% because I feel the same way. I feel like I'm going to a general practitioner, and I may need a specialist, but until I actually have a diagnosis, I don't know what I'm looking for yet. So I'd actually like to know. There's so much knowledge about water and different sections of water and different needs that until we know exactly what questions we want to ask, I don't know exactly who I want to ask those questions of. So, I mean, I love that we're trying to be so proactive, but until we know what region or what question or what actually specific need there is, I hate to just bring a whole bunch of people in and have them sit here and be almost a mirror of what we're trying to do until we know exactly what we need and have the best people to answer that specific question. I'd rather wait till we know exactly what we're doing.
Any Any question? Kate, anything?
I have nothing more to add to that comment. What staff could do is send out letters of interest to entities if this body felt like this industry list was capturing all the needs, potential needs. We could send out letters asking for letters of interest back that we could then at least start presenting to this body, hey, here are some potential subject area, matter experts that could serve in that role for you. And then when you start to define what that TAC would be used for, you might have a go-to list.
And to Roger's point, I think we need to be able to give them some guidance as to why we would want them to participate. I think that's kind of what you were saying.
Absolutely.
So it seemed like the charge of this committee was primarily focused on a long-range plan for the county. So I guess we need to come up with sort of a statement of what we want the technical advisory committee to do in conjunction with helping us achieve our mission. And so some kind of a statement maybe we could agree on here this afternoon that we would want to put in the letter that you're suggesting to go out to people, so then they can look at that and see if they have a role.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, James?
Jim Morris. So during their first meeting, I wasn't here, of course, I was online, but I was the one that made the suggestion about Denver Water and Colorado Springs Utilities and Aurora, who works with Colorado Springs. But I thought bringing in, some of those quote-unquote older systems that have been around a long, long time, they've done a ton of planning, continue to do a lot of planning, and just have them come and talk to us about how they plan and what they've done. And they started 150 years ago or whenever it was with a plan. And, we're 150 years late. I think it would be helpful for this group to have the planning people from those groups come in by invitation or however it may be, to come and talk to us about their planning efforts. I think that would be a huge benefit to kind of get everybody on the same level playing ground here on where we're headed with our plan.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the other observation I'd like to make is you're going to be asked to look at a lot of different things over time by our Board of County Commissioners, such as the Rural Water Authority. So this idea of like an a la carte TAC list of folks that you could ad hoc pull together based on the question that's before you. So right now, the water plan is your number one question, right? Well, when we look at this next, if you feel like you need to pull someone in to discuss the Rural Water Authority request and what other questions the board may ask of you in the long run, you can do that as they come down. And we're going to help as much as we possibly can to solidify that question. But then you could put out a request to folks, would you like to come in and talk about Rural Water Authority or any land use policies around water, a change in standards of some sort? Is 0.75 the right number? Things of that nature. Should we move aquifers? Should we move our margins? It's in our zoning resolution. So there's a lot of things that you may be asked to look at by the Board of County Commissioners that isn't necessarily one of these or associated with the water plan. So I like the idea of being able to kind of dip into that as you see fit. Because you may not need to hire or pull anybody in volunteer-wise. I said hire, and I didn't mean to say that. So pull those folks in as you need. So you should consider that too, because I think there may be an expanding bit of reliance on you and your expertise based on some of these different questions that come down.
Mr. Chair.
Harold?
I'm seconding what I'm hearing Terrence saying. I think the concept of bringing in expertise for areas we're dealing with, we know that the margin question the commissioners have said is headed our way, expanding the margins. And some of these other issues, maybe calling together particularly districts in the county who have hands-on experience to give us up close and personal direct, I think would be very valuable. And maybe not picking a group today, but bringing them in as we need them. as sounding boards would be very valuable. I also agree with James that I think bringing in like Denver Water and others to have them present to us and talk with us is great. But I think if we're dealing with something, bringing in a group of experts from some of our districts to solve a specific challenge that we're dealing with, I think would be very worthwhile.
Evan, you were going to say something, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was going to second what James Morris mentioned about, excuse me, bringing in entities like Denver Water or CSU, Colorado Springs, because and Aurora, because they're big, sophisticated departments. And while I disagree they started out with a plan, they certainly know how to plan now, and they do it, and it would be interesting for us to learn, what their approach is. So we know what Denver's approach is versus what Colorado Springs' approach is, just so we can help get our arms around what Douglas County's approach might be or could be. So that's one task, is doing our water plan. Then the second is that, like Harold was mentioning, there are going to be these one-off advisory opinions that we have to give to the commissioners. And in that sense, I think you're right. It's more of a local expertise that we're looking for to help advise us on these things.
So if you just take a minute here and make sure I'm not way off base here, I want to make sure I'm bringing it back together to something that's cohesive we might be able to put our teeth into for a second. So I guess what I'm really looking at here is I'm looking at a list of people who are involved and could be potential individuals or entities that we want to call upon and ask them, would you please come in and help us deal with something? And I think what we're going to do is to finalize that list, and I think that's what you're doing, is saying, well, should we put other resources in there? Then I think the direction to staff at that point would be go out and find if they are willing to participate, and do they have individual names and contacts that we could use to contact and say, come in and help us with that. And I'm sure some of that is going to be, you did planning. What were some of the things you ran into? How did it work for you? What direction did you take? Clearly, I think we're going to need some direction because we're engaging in an effort that hasn't been engaged in before to this degree. I think on minor levels it has, but not on a large, broad scale. So I think what we can do then is begin to get that list of technical support, and we call them technical support, and we have to watch that name out because we're not asking for the engineers to come running in here and give us how many parts per million. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is that high level, this is how it works, this is what it goes, this is what we ran into, or this is what you need to think about. And I think that's what we can call on as we begin to go forward with this. Clearly, you might be getting the sense, I'm getting the sense, we're kicking this off. We're struggling just a little bit to make sure that we get our feet on the ground here as to where we're going to go with this. So I would recommend that what we do is take the input that each member here has. Let's make sure our list is inclusive and that it's broad enough that we think that we can get the necessary or access to necessary expertise and make them aware, because the last thing you want to be able to do is say, we need your help and I'm not available for the next 6 months. It's going to be the battle cry. So I think that would be great if we could put that together, because there's a lot of other resources too that are out there that can help us in that regard. Thoughts on that? James?
Jim Morris. So everybody can call me Jim. I'll change my nameplate. But I think you're headed in the right direction, Chairman, that at this point I think it's something to throw in your glove box for when you do the agenda for the next meeting, to start planning on how we're going to implement this technical advisory committee. And maybe the list that we have, it shouldn't be titled technical advisory committee at this point, that it's something else. But I think you're headed in the right direction. And I represent the Perry Park Metro District. We're small, 1,500 taps. We've got a master plan, but it's been prepared by our engineering firm, and we're going through an update right now because the last one was about 6 years old. So small entities like ours, we don't have staff. So we're using engineering professional services to do that planning for us. So I think it looks different than, let's say, what Denver Water does. We're planning out 10 years. They're planning out 50 years. And so, I think this group is looking at that longer term plan. I don't know if we were to bring somebody in from Perry Park, what they could tell us about what this committee should do. They probably have feedback on what we, are going to do, but I don't know that they're going to be a lot of help with us developing a 50-year plan for Douglas County. They can come in and say, here's what we're doing, here's our plan, but it's, they're not going to have a lot of help.
Correct. Frank?
Yeah, Frank Johns. I think we need to somewhat determine what we need from these people. I mean, you list CDPHE. Yeah, we need specifics. Okay, what do? They have water reuse regulations. Do we need their help? I've been on the stakeholder group since day one on the reuse regulations. I think I can kind of lead in and let us know when we need help. James, Water Conservation Board. Do we need help? Or can you speak to 90% of the questions and maybe as we narrow in? So some of the stuff is we need to identify what do we need them to come help us with, the planning with Denver and, Colorado Springs Utilities, that may be a good start and things like that. But some of these others, we don't know what our plan is going to be, and until we do that, I don't think we know where the assistance is needed.
I would like to put forth a recommendation, because I think we're just going to go round and around on this particular item. And I think that recommendation would be, we have a list here. I think we have some items we can put together here. I think we can give staff then the capability to move forward and maybe start reaching out and identifying individuals they may want to participate. But I'm going to tell you, some of these larger entities are going to say, sorry, but which expert? Because we have experts in specific categories, and you're going to run yourself ragged, because I think we're just a little bit premature on developing this list and getting it finalized. Because what are we asking them to do? I think once we get to it, there is one level, as an example, we really want to reach out to is who's done and completed a water plan that we may want to come in and talk to us and just say, this is what we did, this is how it worked, here's the pitfalls, this is what you want to be cognizant of. So I think, and then there's different levels of water plans. There's local counties, there's local water providers, and there's the state, for God's sake. 254 pages, and I still haven't finished reading it, but it's put me to sleep a couple nights, so that's great. But any rate, those are the things I think we really want to hone in on. So at this point, what I would do is I think we ought to take this item, add those names to it, give the staff maybe a little direction to begin trying to get us some contact information so that we can immediately know who we can reach out to for advice on something. But I don't know if having a standing advisory committee at this point is a little premature. Any thoughts or anything on that? Yes, James?
James Eklund, thanks, Mr. Chair. So the water planning process that the state went through when I was a director of the Water Conservation Board started with basically a water index. And what you're describing would be consistent with resources we could draw on and staff could help go to get that index built. Because, before you make a roadmap, you've got to know what state you're in and what's going on. And then once you've got that kind of index, you can then start to hone in on, well, okay, you've got supply, demand, conservation. There are many topics that the group would want to flesh out in specific ways, but it starts with that index. I like your recommendation, and I don't know if that requires a motion or whatever, but the staff's put together, I think, a really good start to that, and we can just add, maybe can we give ourselves a deadline, like by the end of the week, we've got any additional names or organizations that we want to add to this inventory to the staff? Does that sound okay?
Roger?
Just a question. I had the feeling or sense that this wasn't a completed document. This was a living document that we were going to add to it consistently because, again, I'm a reporter, so having a list of contacts that I could contact at any time for any specific subject matter, saying, hey, break this down to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Explain the stock market, explain this, whatever. Was really valuable to me. It's how I made my bread and butter for years. So I was hoping this would be a living document, that if we needed information on CDPHE with water quality, or if we needed some sort of lift station information, if we needed aquifer, whatever it was, there would be individuals we could contact and go, even if they weren't the person, they could guide us to the right person. And it was a living document we can continue to add to and pass down.
So,
right?
if I would like to do at this point, then if we can, and I think, Roger, I agree with you. I think I probably agree with everything everybody's said here so far. I think we're all saying the same thing. Let's just take this particular item. I don't want to table it, but I just want to say let's continue it because we want to add things to it, and we've got to put some other information around it, and then I think we'll be more prepared to make an action item out of it. But right now, I think the only action item is to come back with this particular item with some more detail at that point in time, and I think we can begin to work around when we need to call upon. But it's absolutely correct. I think having a resource guide is going to be helpful in that regard. Is there anyone in the commission that disagrees with that approach or has another approach they would like to put forward? Okay, with that, I think we're going to move on to the next agenda item if we can. And I think, is there enough information, Katie, for you to be able to? Okay. The next agenda item is recommendation for, wait 1 second, please, here. Sure. Okay, next step will be to rural water. Okay, Rural Water Authority has a funding request that they have put forward. I believe they're wanting, I don't know the status of this request and would like staff to give us some advice as to, has this gone to the commissioners? Will it be going to the commissioners? Or is it something they just wanted to run by? Because we obviously don't have approval authority. We can have something to look at and say, we have no problem, whatever, and then they can send it forward to the commissioners. But I don't know what action would be done on it at this level.
Thank you, Chair. This is Katie for staff. The Rural Water Authority of Douglas County did make a request to the Board of County Commissioners for $60,000 in funding for this year. There were specific purposes for that money. Our commissioners did want the Water Commission to hear their request and have you all make a recommendation to them about that funding. So what we've done is provided maybe a few guiding questions for this commission to consider as they hear this request. Rural Water Authority representatives are here tonight, this afternoon. They do have some presentations. If the Water Commission is amenable to seeing those presentations, we're prepared to do that for you as well.
So I would like to see the presentation strictly from this standpoint. I think it gives them an opportunity to introduce themselves to this commission, an opportunity to talk about what they're doing, because I'm sure their funding is going to be impacted by what they do and what their requests are. So I think if they have a presentation and they have something they would like to present, I think this is a great opportunity. It's our first step to hearing from an outside entity as we begin to go on this planning process and as we get there. So I would love to hear from it, and then if they have a specific request, I think they can put forward to the commission as a whole at that point in time. Is that okay? Everybody cool with that? So with that, Katie, I'm going to turn it to you. If you could please then direct the Rural Water Authority. Okay.
Absolutely. I think Mr. Gager would like to begin. And what I'm going to have you do actually is come over to this podium, because you can use a microphone over here. I feel like Phil Donahue. And so staff has your presentation. It's going to be able to share it on the screen. I'll ask them to do that for you. And Lynn, if you don't mind, or Sabrina, if you don't mind sharing the first presentation from Mr. Gager, the PDF document.
Thank you, Katie. It just takes a minute to transition to the PDF.
Actually, Harold, if you just want to move right up here.
Lynn, if it is possible, could you zoom in on that document a bit? And Mr. Gager, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay. My name is Barry Gager. I'm a board member of Thunderbird Water and Sanitation District, a little bit to the southwest of Sedalia. Thunderbird is one of the members of the Rural Water Authority of Douglas County. You don't really need to read all that. I just wanted to put a couple of the pieces of paper up there that indicate that the Rural Water Authority of Douglas County was originally formed in 2008, and included the Douglas County and Grandview Estates. At a later date, in 2008 and 2009, Thunderbird and Luviers joined, and Douglas County a few years after that left. The main objective that's developed for the Rural Water Authority of Douglas County has been a program in conjunction with the United States Geological Survey to take well measurements of rural individual wells throughout the county to get a better handle on aquifer behavior and supply. And we've continued to do that since about 2011. And we had initially funding from the county. A couple of times we've had some funding from the Colorado Water Conservation Board. But what funds we've had, because we don't charge anybody anything, has dwindled to the point where our work with the USGS, though they're willing to continue doing this, we don't have the funds to do that, nor to pay correctly some of the outside administrative folks that help us with legal issues that that we don't have that in-house. We have in front of us an opportunity to continue for another year, and between the cost for that and other projects that we wish to keep going, we've asked the county to fund us with $60,000 for this next year. And as you've heard, they are asking you to give them some advice as to whether they should do that or not. This is really our biggest project, and we're really interested in the results. And I think when the day comes that that you start to incorporate information in what you've been charged to do, information about the rural portion of the county, we would like to have as much data as we can. Obviously, if you just do this sort of work for just 1 or 2 years, we're well past that now, but it helps to have a good data set and something that you can, that the engineers and hydrologists can work with. So Mr. Steve Boand has been a consultant for us on this project, and I'd like to invite him to give you, to flesh that out a little bit for y'all.
Thanks, Barry. You want to roll the other slideshow?
Hey, Steve, can you get closer to the mic there? Would you mind, please?
I'll get right in
Oh,
there
okay.
for a second.
After you tap dance there? Thank you.
And then will you bring up Mr. Boan's PowerPoint, please?
Yes, absolutely.
That's not it. I'm kidding. There it is. Barry gave you the basics. The Rural Water Authority was created in 2008 to further better understanding of conditions in rural Douglas County. There are somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 families in rural Douglas County that depend upon private wells. Key directions for the authority over the past set of at least 10 years is monitoring and interpretation of well conditions and providing rural water users with information. They've done that through a conference that was held early on. Next slide, please. So as Barry indicated, the 2024 funding request was a continuation of monitoring. I'm recommending that the expansion of the monitoring program move to about 30 wells for 2024, 2025. We have a rural water user forum, and they need funding, as Barry indicated, for operations and contingency, $60,000 requested. Next slide, please. So we have three current but very distinct rural Denver Basin aquifer water level monitoring programs in the state. One is the Colorado Division of Water Resources, and they monitor 35 wells. The Rural Water Authority of Douglas County has 17 wells, and the Grandview Estates Rural Water Conservancy District also has their own independent program just within their subdivision that has about 17 wells also. So you say, well, the state's doing this. How come we need to keep on? Well, the state primarily is reporting data from the large water providers. Castle Rock has very nicely provided information to them. In a minute, we're going to see the different types of information, but the state only looks at 6 early wells in the Parker area primarily for water level conditions in those wells. Next slide, please. Okay, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I just need to ask one quick question. The wells, these are taking existing wells and just getting permission to use them as monitoring purposes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because for that price, I don't think you're drilling. So, okay, great.
No,
Thank you.
not drilling. 2 types of data. There's periodic, where somebody from the USGS comes out 1 to 4 times a year and collects one data point. You get what you get with that, which is a picture of kind of how things were. You don't know whether the well was pumping, whether it had been under static water conditions for a while. What we really like to see is continuous monitoring of the well through a transducer. The USGS transducers record the water level every minute, but you can set it for a day or for an hour, whatever you would like. And then I'm going to tell you what that gobbledygook on there means. Jack, that's a technical term. Yeah. All right, next slide, please. Okay. So you would look at this data from 2012, and you can see what would appear to be a slight decline in water levels in the aquifer. We're doing these type of charts for 10 transducer wells right now. The board will be looking at them over the next several months. You can see the periodic data underlaying the minute-by-minute readings. But is this well doing okay? That is an appropriate question. Next slide, please. So what we're really doing is assessing this transducer data, the water level readings on a minute-by-minute basis against what has been recorded with the state on how the well was constructed. And you can see in the chart on the left that this well is about 300 feet. The depth to groundwater is within that blue box on the right, and that's represented by the transducer data. So is this well doing okay? Absolutely. We can make some inferences statistically about where things are headed, but this is really important data to understand whether there are challenges with wells in rural Douglas County. Now, we don't have a whole lot of great data on the edges of the aquifers. That would be a point where I would recommend that we have a little bit more information collected on an additional 10 wells or so. Next slide. Here's the data request, or sorry, the funding request pursuant to what Barry talked about. The $60,000, $48,000 would go to a continuation and expansion of the USGS monitoring program. We would like to hold a rural conference on water in 2024, 2,500, operations 6,000, and then a contingency, in case we're off a bit, of 3,500. Glad to answer any questions, but this is real information that's being collected about water users in Douglas County. Hi, Evan.
Hello, Steve. Haven't seen you for many years.
It's been 20.
I have a question about, is this mostly focused on the Denver Basin aquifers, not any of the shallow aquifers?
That's correct at this point.
Okay.
There are really not very many wells in the alluvium, and on the western side of the county, there are a couple wells that are in the bedrock over there, the granite, but it's tough going in the granite. So.
Right. I know in my neighborhood there are a couple of community wells that are shallow, I believe. I'm not sure exactly how deep they are, but
Yeah, we can sure research that out. Glad to answer that.
yeah.
This is Frank Johns. Groundwater is a big concern in the county, and this just looks at a tiny portion of the data because we've got all the water and sand districts that have their wells and the towns and that stuff. And it would, I mean, their USGS report's great and all this stuff. It shows some good, things, but you're focused more on individual rural wells and stuff like that, as opposed to our water supply. We're concerned about an ongoing water supply. I was just showing Don a picture I took of a poster down at Woodmore Water and Sand District that showed headlines, Rocky Mountain News. That may give you an idea how old it is. 2003, saying Douglas County's groundwater was going to be unusable in 10 to 20 years. Oh, wait, that was over 20 years ago. So, groundwater is a huge concern, and yes, we're concerned about our rural people and that, but groundwater supplies everybody here. And it would be great to get this expanded to include more data. The one advantage of using the towns and the water districts is they've got pumping records for those wells. When all you have is, here's the trend, and we don't know whether that homeowner even lived there for, the whole time. So, very important, but I think we ought to use this and then look into expanding it to include more wells.
Well, I think you're 100% on target. Fortunately, many of the districts do collect data from their wells. We were given the opportunity with Mark Marlowe's help to look at Castle Rock's data this past year for, I think we looked at 17 Arapahoe wells. And Castle Rock is put right up front in their water plan.
They're asking, IT's asking.
Castle Rock has put information right up front on their webpage and water plan that their supplies in the Arapahoe aquifer are declining about 4% per year. And if you look at the original studies and that were done for the county, we know that after about 60 to 70 years of pumping, that we run into real challenges. Well, unfortunately, I'm getting that old. Hilbert, I know you are too, for the same vintage. I think you need to look broadly at this concern. Is anybody at a disaster level? Well, I can tell you a couple that are right now. I do volunteer hydrology work and financial work for several districts around the county. I am a volunteer for the Rural Water Authority of Douglas County. I've already worked plenty of years, so now I just do fun stuff. But you're spot on. So we need a good picture of what's happening, especially on the margins. That's where we knew the first problems would occur. And we're starting to see some of those occur even last year.
Jim? Chairman, this is Jim Morris. I believe the state collects the data on the wells anytime a new well is drilled. And we report, our district reports each year on our wells. You know, we've got, our original well data, and we have to report the depth down to the, water every year. We've actually seen an increase in water height.
That is
the depth to
not-
the water is less.
Yeah, it's common.
And so, although I think this is a great idea, my concern is that, in my opinion, it's the cart before the horse here. This could be something that we would come out with as far as our water plan as well. Part of the plan is we need to do this as a recommendation to the commissioners. But throw 60,000 at this now, I don't recall when the last, I've been on the outskirts of the Rural Water Authority for a couple of years, and so I know that in the past Douglas County did provide some funding, but they haven't for several years, is my understanding. And again, I think this data will be useful. There's a ton of data out there now on the water district wells, and any well that's drilled has to report, and the state has that data. So they're keeping track of, water level depths in the different aquifers based on drills, wells that are being drilled in the county or across the state, is my opinion. But again, from my standpoint, I think this is pretty early for us to be making a recommendation without us actually knowing what our plan is going to include.
So the state does collect data upon initial completion of the well. They don't collect a whole lot of data on an annual basis, and they have elected not to interpret any of their information. So the interpretation becomes important. Sterling Ranch just developed a well over by Sedalia, last year? And certainly that data is in the, files right now. But we don't have ongoing water level measurement in many of those wells. That's often held by the district, not by the state. And it would be great for this commission to look at all that information, figure out where things are headed, and, what are your conclusions then?
Tricia?
Okay, Tricia Bernhardt. I think the important thing here is to remember that the consistency of this data. We're not starting this program. This started back in 2008. We have consistency in the data in these wells, and what we're asking is a continuation of collecting the data in these wells. I think it's very important for the consistency. I agree that we certainly could use more data, we certainly could use more well monitoring, but right now we're just asking for continuation, and we need some funds to continue. And yes, I'm a member of the Rural Water Authority of Douglas County.
Harold, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, Harold Smethels, I agree. It is certainly, to me, almost a no-brainer to continue the USGS monitoring. I mean, the data you can use. The question is, what are we looking for? The thing that has worried me is not so much the Arapahoe Basin, and if you've got $1 million, you can drill a well down there, but the residents that we have that are in the Dawson and the Denver, and getting data on that, and the vision, it seems to me, would be to get this data to come up with a threat zone so we can plan as a county where we expect problems with those rural residents, not the districts, the rural residents in the Dawson and the Denver. Are those depleting, and are we looking at a problem down the road? So I'd like to see a plan to come out specifically with the shallower aquifers, with the residential users, of how we come up with the threat scenario of where we think problems would be. A second, being an old finance kind of guy, these numbers don't match to what's here, that was presented in our packet. So we need to reconcile those things.
One is
But
a budget.
I certainly think we should continue expansion of the USGS.
Harold, to answer your question, one is the budget that the authority had. This is how the $60,000 would be applied. Two separate answers.
I would like to take a moment, if I can, and just share something with the board. I need to do it, I think it's my a point of disclosure. So I actually was a commissioner when we voted on this plan and put it together, and Commissioner Bowen at that time led that effort. And so I wanted to say, here's the issue we need to think about. So this is a Douglas County plan. And one of the things we've got to deal with, and this is the gorilla in the room, let's face it, you've got water providers who are obviously anxious saying, we've got a plan, we're working on it, we know what our future needs are, and we've got all of this, and we've done our engineering, and I mean, I can guarantee you there's nothing Ron Red can't tell me about his water other than he doesn't have enough money. And so, and that's going to be every story out there. The real problem we ran into in 2008 was a result of what happened in 2002, 2004, when wells in the rural area went dry and they had no option. They had no backup except a cistern, in which some of them brought water into those residents. The point is, we never saw it coming. The commissioners at that time never saw it coming. And it happened, bam. And so one of the things that I think we have to do as part of this commission is to realize this umbrella is far more than just districts. This umbrella is also rural. And I think the rural district has to be handled differently and be looked at differently than the other, because you said it, Harold, a rural provider is not going to build $1 million well down into the Arapahoe. He can't do it, okay? But he can go ahead and lower his current well another 50 to 100 feet and pay the $40,000, $50,000 that it costs him to do that. And what we need to do, I think, personally, I saw this data for the first time. I was always wondering, with the rural water, are they really doing anything? And the answer, I guess you are. So thank you. And this data was very informative from that standpoint, understanding where those wells are located. I do one thing about the data I don't like. There's not enough touch points. And that's what you're saying, is that you want to move out and get more touch points so that we can understand in margins C, B, and A who's in real trouble, when, and how, and why. And this is only from this standpoint. Now, this is my elected official hat. You really can't leave a single home out there and just say, well, it's your problem. That's very heart-wrenching when you find out somebody's out of water and they're going to a local rec center to shower and taking their kids down to those rec centers to shower in the morning before they go to school. And that's what was happening. A lot has changed. A lot of improvements have been made. What we want to make sure we do at this part of this mission, I believe, is make sure we get ahead of that, but don't leave anybody behind. I really hope one of our goals is not to leave anybody behind in that regard. El Paso County has to deal with the same issue because they've got all that stuff way out east to deal with. So we're not approving this. We don't have the money. I think the $60,000 is the ask they're making of the commissioners. The other monies are part of grant monies they're already getting from other sources and even membership. So I don't have a problem with moving. We're not approving anything other than to say as a consensus. I think, do we approve that they move forward, or is it a good idea, bad idea? I don't think we have enough information to know anyway, to be quite honest with you. We're still new on that. But I tell you what I am impressed with. I am impressed with the guys that have been doing stuff for the last few years, and it's water related, and it gives us information that when we get to that rural water authority point, we're not leaving anybody behind. So that's really good. Sorry. Jim? Oh, no, excuse me. You were up first, James. Go ahead.
Thanks, James Eklund. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just two quick questions for you guys. Good job on the presentation. One is, do you have an idea of how much the USGS budget, how much the USGS has been kicking in terms of federal money into this program?
It varies. Is that Mike? It varies each year or each period where we do continue the project with them. And so sometimes the USGS portion is as much as twice the rural water authorities. Sometimes it's more equal.
So we know that the cost to monitor wells about $2,300 per year. And I don't have breakdown on transducer versus periodic measurements, but Barry is correct. The GS has been putting in varying amounts. We are concerned with the lack of a federal budget. Of course, they can't make any commitments for 2024 until there's a 2024 federal budget. And that may go on as a strategy. But we are working with them. Barry works with them every week to get the right number.
Thank you for that. So the other question is kind of piggybacking on that, as having directed the agency where you're going for $12,000, the Water Conservation Board, the way that I think of this is you're leveraging that federal commitment, those resources, because you're kicking in 60, but you're getting a lot more value than just what you're being able to find in terms of a grant receipt. So the second question is with regard to the Water Conservation Board, where are you in that process? Has the staff recommendation come out on the $12,000 grant request?
We're not engaged currently with the Colorado Water Conservation. They have provided some grant funds in the past. When the state program came out, the funding, the Conservation Board funding, what they were looking for changed, and we didn't, we didn't wind up getting any money after that. And it wasn't because they denied it, it was because in informal conversations, we were, I shouldn't say led to believe, but we thought that the way they were headed, it would be quite unlikely that we would be successful in getting money that way.
So I think
Hopefully now it's different, but I don't know one way or the other.
What I'm going to be recommending is that the board look at approaching the CWCB for an interpretive grant. As you'll notice in the USGS report, there's no interpretation in there. There are two agencies that have elected not to provide any interpretation of Denver Basin aquifer well data. One is the Colorado Division of Water Resources, Office of the State Engineer. They're going to collect the data, but they won't tell us what it means. Also the USGS. So that's got to be a big direction change, and we think the CWCB is a logical entity because they are definitely policy for the state of Colorado.
So, out of respect of time, we have three more people who would like to talk at this point, and then would like to cut this off and see if they still want to talk. I do want to point out one thing, I would say, from working with government agencies and entities and bureaucracies and bureaucrats, I'm just going to say this. We're more than happy to participate if everybody else does. That is the mantra in government. So if you put in $1 and you can get them to put in 50 cents and them a quarter, we'll give you 50 cents. And that's the way it goes down, and that's what James was alluding to. Every road in this county almost has been built based upon that same mantra. You put in some money and we'll put some skin in. But if you ain't, we ain't. So that's what Steve was talking about, and that's what James was talking about. So the skin goes two ways. It's not just to do a program that's very good, but it's also to be able to leverage that and be able to tell other entities, you know what, we've got other people that are serious and in the game. We need your money. So I got it. Let's. I'd like to go down. First one was Roger.
Thank you, Roger Hudson. I'm going to be so much shorter than everybody else. My other job has been at the Capitol and with the Attorney General's office, and we've referenced you. Rural Water Authority as data, and we have lots of people coming in from Douglas County. I've had it in public testimony talking about that not only have they run out of water in their wells, but have had to move not once but twice their wells on their property. I've heard several times that people in this room and other rooms that there's plenty of water in Douglas County for rural homeowners. There's lots of rural homeowners who would tell you that's not true. That they're going at a high expense to move their wells. My city, Castle Pines, we are split in our water resources. We use district water resources, but we own well resources. Castle Pines is a city that is highly dependent on wells. So the future of Douglas County for my city is going to be based on wells. And how we measure those waters and how we maintain them are really important to me, and maintaining Douglas County and the future of it, and making sure that Douglas County remains looking like Douglas County is the future of our wells. And so I'm very excited about this, and I'm actually very sad that it was not continued, and we're using old data at the Capitol now. I'd like to see new data, and I would love to see us continue this. If it's not today, supporting the commissioners, I'd love to see it be part of whatever plans we put together.
Clark?
I was just going to add that I think, as Steve has said, and I think others have alluded to, our major water providers have this kind of data, and we have good data. Where we have to go the extra mile to get this kind of data is in the rural areas. I think as we go through this process of this commission over the next year or so, we're going to find that the plans are in place or are being developed by the major water providers. The hole in the look, if you will, is in the rural areas. And so our focus is undoubtedly going to be in how we provide, how the county helps provide, solving the problem of water to the extent that there is a problem in the rural areas. So I think having this kind of data, I'm not an expert in whether this is the best way to get this kind of data, whether it's cost effective or not, but it seems like it's data that we need to have. So I think it's probably something we ought to do.
So,
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion?
Well, I'll let you have Frank's talking time.
Perfect. I'd make a motion that we support the funding request for 2024 that's been put forward and described by the
I will second that motion.
So we have the motion on the board is to provide a recommendation to the commissioners that they do go ahead and fund this source for the Rural Water Board, and we do have a second. Any discussion? Harold?
Sorry. Harold, we were asked for our advice, and our advice, I think, the motion is that we fund and continue gathering data. I do think this doesn't really reconcile to what the budget is, so I think we need to make it clear that that's what we're recommending. I would like to see a friendly amendment that our goal is to find out what I call a threat assessment to where we see problems in the rural area coming to anticipate future problems and use this as a data or additional data to get that information.
James?
So my comment is that any well is going to fail eventually. No well will ever last forever. And so when rural wells fail, it's a combination of things. And even the water district wells that fail are caused by a combination of issues. Some larger water districts have monitoring wells just to monitor the water level away from the well that's pumping. That's one of the weaknesses in the rural water, in the rural wells, is we don't know anything about what's happening out there except for when the well goes dry. We don't know if it was the aquifers dropping or if the well just failed, as they all naturally do. And so I think to me, and the report here says 2011 to 2019. So my question, I guess, is this still going on since 2019? And then is that data out there, or where did the money come from since 2019?
Steve, can you answer that, or sir, can you just yes or no? I mean, is it still monitoring?
Yeah, the monitoring has been ongoing. The numbers I gave you for the number of wells we're looking at were the 2023 numbers, and we've seen a decline in participation for various reasons. People move, people say, "Oh, I don't really want to know that." Where the money has come from is largely donations. So the Rural Water Authority is paired with a foundation, And people make donation to the foundation, but we can't go much further beyond the current network without additional funding. So a big part of the $48,000 is to beef up the network. It goes to what Harold talked about, is on the edges. We need much better information. We only have this much. We need that much. Water supply across the county is location, location, location. I have promised my wife that our well and water supply will last at least 2,000 years, which she is planning to be alive throughout and to let me know if we have problems. But no, honestly, it's an important issue that we need to actually work on interpretation now.
Last person, and then we're going to call for the vote. Clark?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that we make a note that one of the first items we ought to assign to our future technical committee is what kind of monitoring we need countywide.
Right.
That's effective for our purposes.
Okay. So,
Harold? Point of order, I offered a friendly amendment to your motion.
Yeah, I'll just call the question. Let's just go with the budget as it's submitted in their request, and that's it. That's my motion.
okay, that's your motion? So we're still there? Okay, with that, we do have a motion on the table. We do have a second. The friendly amendment was not accepted. At this point, there was no second on that. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say nay.
Aye.
Nay. Sorry. Okay, we've got one nay, and the rest are aye, so it does pass. Thank you very much. I think we're moving now into other business, which is member discussion, SharePoint website, and the water plan repository. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Katie.
Potential presentations.
Yeah. This is Katie for
Potential
staff.
water, do we have, are they here?
What I was, this point on the agenda was just to talk about the potential for upcoming presentations.
Okay, great.
Staff did proactively reach out to South Metro Water Supply to tentatively schedule them for February, if this body was okay with that. And then from there on out, we can start identifying potential providers moving forward to come in and do presentations for this body. As part of that, we can also start to talk about the master planning process, scoping that out, and working with this commission to do that.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So the part of that, it was basically is presentation potential presentations that they're going to put forward and that the staff will recommend, and we'll get those on the agenda, okay? All right, at this point, member discussion. I think we've, one moment, please. Katie, member discussion, is this amongst ourselves? That's kind of early, isn't it?
The point of this topic was to enable commissioners to bring topics for discussion to the body as a whole. We can move this up in the agenda next time, seeing
Okay,
what time of the afternoon it is. So we can absolutely move that further up, but I'll leave that to the chair of how you want to do this.
Yeah, I'll work that out with staff on where we position that and make sure that the board members are all familiar with what that process is going to be and that you'll have an opportunity to participate and submit something. Okay, next item is SharePoint website.
These last couple items are housekeeping. We are developing an online repository of plans and information to share to the commission. Over the next week or so, we should have that website finalized for you all as a tool to use.
I have screwed up on my duties. Don, you had a question?
I don't think you screwed anything up. This is Don Langley. The reason I wanted to make a comment here is at the last meeting, there was a discussion about the City of Colorado Springs Department of Public Utilities doing a water master plan. So I went out and I found that plan. It's actually published, 272 pages, I think. It's about 40 megabytes. I did forward a link to Katie, have downloaded a copy. I think it'd be a really interesting read for people to take a look at, and in particular, how they got information from their water providers. I mean, they had them put the stuff online. They got both what the water providers think their supplies are, what their future supplies are. I mean, they did this in a current 2040 and 2060 look, and then also had the water suppliers articulate what they're working to on future demands. So that part of the report, I think, would be really useful for us because one of our first items is to try and develop a gap analysis, try and find out what our supplies are and what our demands are going to be. And I thought that was just a really interesting way for them to do it. When you talked about having maybe somebody come talk to us, maybe somebody from Colorado Springs, it was done within the planning and community development, if I'm correct. So it's in their master plan. It's a planning document. So there's a lot of information out there. I think it'd just be really good to post that and let people take a look, and there's things we could talk about. So.
Because it's going to be timely, and I think we could miss something if Katie and them send out an email. We're going to be getting an email shortly about this meeting, I'm sure, and some of the things that they did. I think it would be a great opportunity for members who have suggestions and other people who you think you would like to hear from to just reply to that message and give her that so she can begin to compile a list so that we have them all captured for all of us so that we can share. Is that okay?
Were those action items or?
Well, it's no, what these are. These are potential individuals that we could have come in and talk to us and what.
Okay.
So this is the first example is, hey, come on, we've got a El Paso County, somebody over there's got a water plan they just finished. Great idea to have somebody like that talk to us. I think hearing from James even would be a great idea because he's just been running through that recently. Okay. And
Tricia Bernhardt, just quickly pointing out that the consultant that prepared that El Paso water plan is in the audience, so he might be willing to schedule a time to come talk to us.
And who was that? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So he just volunteered to do it free, but then, no, just kidding.
Okay, all bets are off then.
So you didn't know what you were raising your hand for there, bud. No, just kidding.
You might just want to see if anybody online has any other.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Sean, are you still online? Anybody else online? I apologize
Sean is
for
still online.
ignoring everybody, but. Are we there?
He is online. Sean, are you able to unmute yourself?
Would you like to say anything?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I've been listening intently. This has been great.
Okay. Anybody else? Great. All right, let's move to, at this point in time, we're down to water plan repository, something the staff is putting together. So, which actually goes along with the conversation we're just having, because there's a lot of different water plans I've been looking at too, trying to figure out what is this. But Katie, would you like to share with us?
And that's part of the internal website that we are building out for you to share that information, and you'll have access to all those documents. We've been compiling them, so you'll have them electronically.
Any questions about the repository? Okay, well, saying all of that, I just want to say a couple of things if I can before, and then if every member, if anybody's got anything in closing, because I think we're going to be done for today. Part of the goal of any chair is to make sure we facilitate and respect people's time. And when you run over meetings, what we've just done is robbed you of your time. So we apologize for the 5 minutes you just lost in your life. But anyhow, that being said, I will work with staff to come up with the next agenda, make sure that we're clear on some of the minutes. Please keep your eye on the emails so that if we miss something, I'm going to be totally depending on you guys to correct and to provide input. And it's totally expected and would be appreciated. So if you do that. By the way, I have been into the Colorado plan. It's pretty interesting. Very good document. Thanks, James, for you guys' work on that. All that being said, before we adjourn, anybody around the room got something they would like to say, add to, go to the order? Okay, with that, I think it says, James?
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I don't know about that. So, good of the order is I better stop wasting time, and I look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. You're dismissed.